Okay, hello and welcome to our video about making custom dice and game pieces for TomSka's Depression board game. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ben, aka the Iron Spine, and if you haven't already seen TomSka's Tryhards video, check the description, check the little card on screen, go see that first because you will get spoilers. Okay, so on to the project. I met TomSka on Twitter. He's a really nice guy. We got to talking and he gave me a basic design brief of what he wanted. So he wanted D6s with the 5 replaced with the frowny face and the 6 replaced with the smiling face. Fair enough. He also wanted some game pieces that had a bit of an Asda feel, and after chatting for a little while we decided on a chess pawn with the Asda poker face on it. Okay, so the first step in the design process was 3D model everything. So at this point I need to give a huge shout out to my friend Tom, aka Zuhane1, and my friend Ant, aka iDisposable, who were they were both amazing. They really helped me do this in about half the time it would have taken me otherwise, and time was a big factor with this project. Okay, so to work on the D6 we decided to start with a cube in the right size that we needed, and then we imported the text and the frowny and smiley faces into Blender as two-dimensional planes, if you like. Converted those into meshes and then extruded them into 3 dimensions, so now we've got 3-dimensional numbers, faces, etc. Then what we did was we intersected them with the cube and then just subtracted the numbers from the cube, so we had these lovely indents, precisely the right dimensions, all indented by the same amount, and we did exactly the same thing with the face. Then we simply added a small bevel to the edges. I actually prefer the sharper corners, so in the final we kept them like that, and then our dice was done. Simple as that. There was the question of weight distribution for the dice, and we wanted to make sure that they would land fairly, be fairly random, but with something as light as resin, the amount of material that's been removed was kind of negligible, so it wasn't really a problem with this. If we were doing like metal dice or whatever, it might have been a problem, but this not so much. And then we could apply exactly the same principle to the pawns. We just imported the poker face, made it 3-dimensional, and subtracted it from the 3D model of the pawn. Okay, so after we finished the 3D models, my friend Tom is also a game designer, so we spent longer than I'd like to admit having imported these dice cubes into his psychedelic alien shooter, just running around and blowing stuff up and messing around with these 3D models, but we had to send them off to get them fabricated. So once we had all the dice and pawns fabricated and actually 3D printed, we were able to use them as masters to cast off of. Okay, so in order to create resin versions of these masters that we just had 3D printed, we needed to create custom molds. The way we did that was to suspend or glue the original masters inside little shot glasses and then use silicone to create a custom mold. Time was a huge factor in this project, so I needed to order some silicone that would get here like that, because I had literally days to get this done, and there's a lot involved in something like this of do something, wait 24 hours, do something, wait 24 hours. So I had to order some resin that would come as fast as humanly possible. I ordered some stuff that I'd never used before off Amazon so that it would get here, as my usual stuff takes about 5 days to arrive. Mistake. So getting the miniatures all set up was fine. We stuck down the dice on little suspended bits of cocktail to just keep them elevated, make sure that the silicone could get to all the surfaces, and there was a little bubble release as well as a place for me to inject the resin later. With the pawns it was a lot easier. We just stuck them down in shot glasses and had fun drowning them as we poured the resin in. There was one, unfortunately, that didn't quite have enough resin to cover him, and he was a little bitch. So once we poured all the silicone, we had to wait about 24 hours for it to set before we could remove the shot glasses and get at the molds underneath. We had to use a craft knife to slice through and open them up so as to allow us to extricate what was inside, but not in such a way that the resin would leak out. Now at this stage I was a little bit worried about the silicone molds because it wasn't the stuff I usually used. It looked like it may have bubbled a little bit, but time was of the essence, so I decided to just try and see what would happen. Poured a set of resin into these silicone molds If you're more interested about resin casting and how to make custom dice, there is a video by me on exactly that subject, which I will link in the description. So we pour this set of resin models and every single one of them failed. It was an absolute nightmare. I was thinking for a while that I might be able to polish some of the strange bubbling off, but it just wasn't working. So we had another plan. Perhaps I could get some pre-made little miniatures and use a Dremel to manually add the detail that we needed, but that still didn't solve the problem of dice. So what to do? I ordered some more silicone to make some better molds, but obviously that wasn't going to arrive for days and time was of the essence. So what could I do? I decided to check out some of my local hobby stores and ended up finding, after an exhaustive search, exactly what I needed for more than twice the price. But we managed to grab it and pour a better second set of molds with some actual proper silicone. Again, another 24 hours of waiting, another 24 hours of I hope this doesn't fail because I'm on a clock here. We get this finished, we crack open the molds, we cut them open, and finally pour another set. This time the molds were bang on, good quality. However, because of the fine detail on the miniatures, without using a pressure pot, it was very difficult to stop bubbling, and particularly on the poker face of the little Asdufs, they like to get a little bubble that looked like a tongue sticking out like on one side, which was really fucking annoying. Happened to at least 50% of them, no matter what I tried. Now, my dear friend Naomi has a pressure pot which would instantly solve this problem. However, I do not, and they live all the way up in Newcastle, so I can't simply send them the masters or the molds and say, pour me some resin in these, because time's of the essence. So what we had to do was trial and error, make as many as we could without causing too much issue, and it was difficult. It took about 5 or 6 pourings, and when you're working with resin like this, ideally you want to leave it for about 3 days to set properly. I didn't have that luxury. I'm cracking open these molds after 24 hours and having to be very careful not to leave fingerprints or deform them or twist them in any way, because I need to see if they've worked, and I need to reuse the molds. Obviously, it was a little bit tense, continually trying to pour these things, make sure I got them right, and getting very frustrated when they didn't, because obviously I wanted to deliver something cool for TomSka. So after a few attempts, obviously I'm chatting with TomSka about when he's trying to arrange filming with Eddie and Elliot, and there's scheduling conflicts, and the filming date keeps getting moved, and I'm trying to make sure that these things are, acceptable standard of what I want to deliver. So we were thinking at one point that it might be better to simply ink some of the masters so that we can make sure we've got some nice matte coloured pieces to use in the event that we're having any issue with the resin ones. So that's what I did. I also managed to finish some resin ones and get them facially inked to really pick out the details, pick out the numbers on the dice, pick out the poker faces on the little pawns, which kind of worked. But in the end, it was actually the matte masters that looked better, like that matte opaque finish rather than the semi-transparency coupled with the inked face actually came out looking better. So that's the one we decided to use in the end. So it was a really fun project to work on, if a little bit stressful at times, because I was working to some quite tight time constraints. So it was definitely the things that we were actually molding that were causing the problem, and a pressure pot would have been the answer. So it was very frustrating having kind of one hand tied behind my back by time constraints, but I still think in the end using the matte figurines came out with a pretty nice finish. And hopefully, at the time of making this, I haven't actually seen them play the board game yet, so I'm going to see it on the day that this drops. So hopefully it came up with some good content and the guys liked what I made. We'll see what happens. So if any of you are interested in learning a bit more about how to work with resin, maybe make your own custom dice, etc., I've got a beginner's video which I'll link in the description, which goes through all the basics of dealing with resin, and it shows you that it's actually quite an accessible hobby for anyone who's just interested. So do check that out. As I said, if you haven't already seen the TomSka's video, I hope I haven't given you too many spoilers, but the link to that is in the description as well. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.